Well, Matt Shaw made his debut a couple of days ago for the Cubs at third base, but is he going to be ready for the games in Japan against the Dodgers? If not, I mean, we've talked about this before, but what are the options at third base? And is Gage Workman someone that the Cubs can rely on? We're going to talk about that. Pete Crow Armstrong taken out of the game. Should you be concerned? Former Cub Jose Quintana back in the division and more right here on the Cubs baseball channel. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Let's get this thing going. And thank you guys for hanging out as always. Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillespie, Cubs baseball channel. Great to see you guys as we hang out on a daily basis here and talk about the Chicago Cubs. All right, let's get into this right off the bat. Matt Shaw, in his debut, said he was healthy, said he was 100%, talked about how he has played a lot of third base. He feels comfortable at the position. But how's that going to translate into this two-game series in Tokyo against the Dodgers? I don't know. I mean, he's coming back from the oblique injury. You know, we'll see if he's ready. Is he going to have enough at-bats? Are the Cubs going to want to push him? I still don't think he's going to go, but we'll find out. You know, we still have about a week's time before they're going to make a decision on that. Now, what are the options for the Cubs over at third base? And we've talked about some of them, but there's two guys that Craig Counsell talked about yesterday, and then I think are worthy of bringing up. Vidal Bruján, who the Cubs got in the offseason, he said Bruján has seemingly, maybe it's cliche, but he's coming home with a dirty uniform every single day he's played. Look, that is a compliment. I remember watching guys like Ryan Sandberg, Rhino, always dirty, like he's diving for the ball. You know, grass stains. You didn't want to look white when you got done at the end of the game. You wanted that pinstripe to have some Wrigley Field dirt and grass on there. And for Bruján, he's been able to kind of, you know, play that way. And then Gage Workman, you know, excellent spring. And you're saying to yourself now, who is Gage Workman? And what does, you know, Gage Workman bring to the table? Well, he's the guy that the Cubs took in the Rule 5 draft. He's a former prospect and a fourth-round selection of the Tigers in 2020. And the former ASU standouts from Chandler, Arizona. Boy, that is a baseball hotbed. But he's a big dude, 6'4", 200 pounds. He's a switch hitter. Basically cut down on the strikeouts. He's got the power, and he's good defensively. Not only can he play third, but he can also play shortstop. And I'm kind of excited about what this guy brings to the table. 25 years old, and if the Cubs keep him, he's going to have to stay on the big league roster. And it feels like they're very serious about keeping him, because if they do keep him, he's going to have to be on the active roster. And this is a great opportunity for Workman to be with the Cubs on that big league roster because of one thing and one thing only, and that's the fact that they're thin at third. Shaw has options. With Workman, just consider him not to have options because he's got to make the big league team, and he's had a good spring. The Cubs really seem to like him. I thought at some point that they were going to send Workman back and maybe keep Luis Vazquez, you know, or maybe Alexander Canario, you know, and they didn't. They kept Workman. So that tells me that Workman has a clear shot to make the team, big, strong, and to me, he fits that prototypical third baseman, right? Not too big, but big enough over there with the arm to be able to make the plays. And he's got shortstop range. So we'll see. But he's someone that I'm paying close attention to this spring. And look, he's just got to keep doing what he's doing. And he's got a shot to be on the big league squad. Now, the Cubs are saying that Pete Crow Armstrong left the game because of tightness in his hamstring. So it was precautionary. It's the time of year like, hey, man, if something doesn't feel right, get off the field and just sit back and relax, and let's figure out what it is. The Cubs do not want to have Pete not ready to go for Japan. He's clearly a big part of what we consider this year's team. They're going to want to use his speed, his defensive ability. And I'm telling you, when the guy has it click at the plate, he's going to be someone that they're going to really rely on when it comes to his ability to turn on balls and drive in runs. I think that he's a really good player and a potential superstar if, he's able to kind of translate what we saw him do in the minor leagues. I mean, he's the only guy I've seen do some things. Like, he had a 16 pitch at bat once for a grand slam. I saw him score from second base on an attempted double play with the bases loaded. I mean, like, you saw it in some of these spring games. He runs the bases as well as anyone I've ever seen. And it's almost like he's got X-ray vision because he just knows how to kind of feel what's going on a play and score. He loves to score. So good to know that he's back. Now, this guy is also back, Jose Quintana, but he is not back with the Cubs. He's back in the NL Central, and he signs a deal with the Milwaukee Brewers. And you'll remember that the Cubs gave up Dylan Cease in a deal with the White Sox to get Jose Quintana. He was consistent, not a star. Dylan Cease obviously has become a star, but, another one of those guys that you look at and you're like, hey, man, he's just kind of hanging around. Like, he doesn't try to overpower you. He locates his pitches. He was actually pretty good last year with the Mets. He's going to be one of these guys that pitches into his 40s, right? So back in the division again. And, really interesting to kind of know that that Jose Quintana back with the Brewers, and we'll see him. And hopefully he'll be the Jose Quintana that I remember, which is a guy that seemed to always pitch okay and then give up some big runs. I was never a big fan. Didn't like that trade. Didn't want to give up Eloy Jimenez. Didn't want to give up Dylan Cease. Wish they wouldn't have made that trade. And now, Dylan Cease would be the ace of your staff if you still had him. And you didn't win a World Series with the guy. Now, finally, I wanted to talk about slamming Sammy Sosa. And I've said it on here before. I'm glad he's back. I was excited about him coming back, and I'm still glad that he's back. It's cool to see him in the dugout. It's cool to see him around the spring training facility. It was great that he was at spring training. I get that the steroids era was the steroids era. Was never a fan of that. Thought it diluted records of guys that did it legitimately, but I still love Sammy Sosa. And he was asked about it. He's apologized, I mean, he's stopped short of saying, hey, I was a steroids guy, but he's admitted it. And Mark McGwire's in the game, and Barry Bonds is in the Hall of Fame for the Giants. You guys know how I feel about this. I just, it's cool to have him back. So anyway, they asked him something, and he was like, man, I really don't want to go that route. That's a delicate route. You know what I mean? But come on, nobody was blind. And I think that this is a legitimate, for the steroid errors guys, argument. I think what we wanted was just to admit it. Look, you did it, and it wasn't the right thing to do, but a lot of players were doing it back then. Sammy Sosa is by far the only guy that was on steroids. A ton of guys were on steroids. The game was crazy. The McGwire and Sosa race, and then Barry Bonds, I guess, got on steroids, and it was like watching a superhuman play baseball every day. That's when it got out of hand for me. But man, I loved when Sammy was hitting those home runs. So all of that said, nobody was blind, and I agree with Sammy on that. Major League Baseball should have took the lead a long time before they did on cutting the steroids out of the game. It should have been a lot less than a Jose Canseco book or admission before Major League Baseball started to jump in and say, hey, this isn't a direction that we want to go. But that's not how it was. And, he made some mistakes, obviously, I guess, leaving the dugout, in the last game and all that stuff. But it's great to have him back. 21 years ago. He looks so good in the Cubs uniform. Isn't Mark McGwire's kid like one of the players? Can you imagine that? I saw Mark McGwire last year wearing Cubs gear. Can you just like both of those guys together dressed in Cubs gear? It's pretty funny. But a lot of us have fond memories of Sammy, and it has been cool watching him talk to guys like the Jaguar, Kevin Alcantara, and other players in the dugout, and having him back around. He represents some pretty fun Cubs teams. And, I thought that, look, that's a pretty good defense to me. Like you can't just pin it on him. There's a lot of guys that are pin. I think some guys in the Hall of Fame were on steroids too. And that's a whole nother topic for an entirely different day. But love all of you guys hanging out on the Cubs baseball channel. Appreciate you so much for being a part of what we're doing. And we'll continue to do it. We're going to do it again tomorrow. We're going to do it the next day as we march towards opening day when the Cubs take on the Dodgers. And then the Cubs go to Arizona and play the Diamondbacks with some more spring training sprinkled in between. But like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks for being here on the Cubs baseball channel with me, Mick Gillespie. And we will do it again tomorrow because that's what we do. We do it every day right here on the channel. Go Cubs.